morning. It's 6 o'clock and time to call the Tuesday, July 2nd regular school board meeting to order. Ms. Schultz, may we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Megan Miller, present. Tom Hankins.
Here.
Brian Anderson. He'll be joining us, I believe. Tia Johnson.
Present.
Brian Nichols.
Here.
Amy Levy.
Here.
And Greg Schneider.
Present.
And Tia Johnson.
Still present.
All members are present other than Brian Anderson, who... Brian Anderson, did you just join us?
No, he will not be here for the rest of the evening.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That brings us to the approval of the agenda. May I get a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I would like to recommend a couple changes, I think, to facilitate everything this evening. Based on our audience, I think it would be a good benefit if we completed this items 6A, B, and C, and then move to public comment, because some of the information they may be interested in hearing before public comment. So, and then I would also recommend that we pull policies 7B, well, item 7B, policy 532, because there are several errors in it, and I do believe that there's a legal issue that we need to address. So I would like to go ahead and pull that now.
Okay, so a motion to approve the agenda with change of public comment to go after item 6 and remove item 7B by Brian Nichols. Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Oh, I'm discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you elaborate on what you believe the legal issue is with the policy you want to pull for a second reading?
Yeah, there's nothing in there about the time limit between renewals and non-renewals. It's not in there. It's not added. It's in the statute. And the statute is 188.22, not 118.22. So.
Any other discussion?
I just had a question. I love the thoughtfulness. I'm looking at it differently. I was just wondering if we could keep public comment where it is so people can choose whether or not they want to stay and not have to sit through more board business, but, you know, we'll leave it up to the board. I just wanted to contribute that thought.
Any thoughts on that, Mr. Nichols?
I'm certainly open.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to vote no, just because I kind of want to leave public comment where it is, since a lot of people are here to speak. But I appreciate where you're coming from very much.
Okay. Is that are you offering an amendment?
Would you like? Are you open to an amendment, Mr. Nichols?
Absolutely.
Since there's already been a second, you can do an amendment, but we would have to vote that down and go back to the main motion, or people can just vote whatever they want to have happen.
Any other discussion then? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion fails. Is there an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in.
Aye.
Oh, Go ahead.
Well,
You can still pull it.
yeah.
It's consent agenda.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Can I get clarification on that motion?
Yes, that's approval of the agenda, and my apologies, I did not write down who made the motion or who seconded.
It's just a plain approval of the motion of the agenda then?
Yep.
Without changing anything? Okay.
So if you guys wouldn't mind helping me out, who made that motion? Was that Megan Miller and seconded by Greg Schneider? Okay, thank you. Okay. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight. That brings us to recognitions, and tonight we have a recognition for the George Kolak family, and Monica Christopa is taking this.
Thank you, Board Member Johnson. Last Friday morning, the Kolak Education Center was filled with celebration and heartfelt remembrance as we took time to pay tribute to George J. Kolak, to whom this building is named in his honor. Joined by George's children, Karen Salinas, Joe Kolak, Julie Swanson, and Chris Kolak, and his beautiful extended family from across the country, along with our Board of Education, district staff, and dear friends, we formally dedicated this building in his name. Words of tribute were shared, highlighting George's profound impact. I will share a few words from Board President Tia Johnson's comments. Throughout his 35 years as a teacher and principal, George devoted himself to educating and inspiring students to achieve their best. He passionately believed in the potential of every student and treated everyone with equal respect. He embraced diversity, fostered self-worth, and instilled pride in all. George's unwavering positivity empowered countless individuals to pursue their dreams and turn them into reality. As a lasting tribute, we presented the family with a plaque that will adorn Kolak's entryway, ensuring his legacy lives on for all to see and reflect upon. Tonight, we are pleased that George's daughter, Julie Swanson, can be here to receive this recognition from our Board of Education in honor of her father. Can I say a few words?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'd just like to say on behalf of my entire family, thank you so much for this great honor in remembrance of our father. The school board put on a very heartfelt and beautiful dedication ceremony for us that we truly appreciated and enjoyed. As she stated, that all of our siblings were able to join, as well as the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And we had a wonderful time visiting with everybody and just being able to reminisce. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for everything. We really appreciated it and meant the world to our family. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson and Ms. Christopa. Our next item is 4A, the legislative update.
Hi, good evening. So I did want to apologize because there is a broken link that I just discovered in the update about half an hour ago. So I did send a document to Ms. Shope that I'm sure will be posted as soon as possible there. So let me just open this up, had just a couple of highlights. I need to also update because there was an update very recently that the Legislative Fiscal Bureau released their estimates, so it's not a hard number yet, for the 2025-2027 biennial budget. They believe that there is approximately $5.1 billion surplus with $2 billion in their reserve fund with another $3.1 billion general surplus. So keeping that in mind for our discussion this evening, I think it would, my editorialized comment on that is that it's important for us as a district and as individual community members, as educators, and as people who live in a community that is impacted by public school funding deficits to please raise our voices and advocate to the state that we spend some of that $5.1 projected $billion budget surplus on funding public schools. There was also a DPI memo released. Sorry, I'm like out of breath from clapping. There was also a DPI memo released, which is the broken link, which will be then posted, that really nicely summarizes all of the legislative action taken this past year that impacts public schools. I'm going to highlight just two of those pieces. Particularly all of our elementary school teachers, if not all of our educators, are aware of Wisconsin's Act 20, which is heavily impacting how we do reading instruction throughout the state of Wisconsin. There was recently a lawsuit challenging Act 100, which is the other act that funds Act 20. So the last that when I wrote this report, it's not clear when there will be funding available to implement the majority of the action that the state is requiring school districts to take on Act 20. So that's just sort of something to watch and be aware of. Luckily, I just want to do a shout out to Ms. Moratek and her department. We are like far ahead of the curve in terms of like literacy instruction and where we need to be and what we need to be doing for kids. I'm sure our district will be fine, but that was something troubling, again, just to highlight another what's kind of amounting to be an unfunded mandate. So again, it's just sort of something to watch. They also passed Act 194, which is immunity from liability for administering an opioid antagonist, which is just in service of making sure that we're prepared to address health needs for students, parents, and our community. Last two items for the legislative update is our WASB resolutions are kind of coming up around the corner. The final due date for them is September 15th. Usually we submit those around August, and so I had already reached out to Board President Johnson and Dr. Garrison, and we're hoping to be able to get a board WASB resolution workshop scheduled sometime this summer, just to kind of democratize that. I don't like to be a power or information hoarder. Like a lot of us have been on the board for a while. Some of us are very new to the board. So I wanted to make sure that all of our board members can kind of get a kind of a one-on-one or a 101 on how do you write a resolution, and what happens with those resolutions is if we pass one, it goes to WASB, which is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. If they like our resolution, brings it to their state convention. At the state convention, school board members from around the state will vote on them, and that becomes the legislative priority for WASB and their advocacy for what should happen for public schools. So just like I shared, there's certainly a huge issue with school funding in the state of Wisconsin. It's part of our responsibility as school board members to advocate what is best for our school district to the state, and that is one of many avenues in which to do that. So we can look for a date for that to happen as well, and I appreciate Board President Johnson already kind of checking the calendar and being receptive to that. And then lastly, I just wanted to point out, because later on today we're going to be talking about potentially other town hall meetings, Tom McCarthy from DPI has made himself available to school districts around the state to do both district and community budget presentations, just to help educate community members and certainly district folks about like how the state budget works to fund public schools, and of course what we can do locally to organize around mitigating the damage of underfunded public schools indexed to inflation since the 2008-2009 school year. So I wanted to bring that up to our board for future consideration in case we would like to reach out to Mr. McCarthy from DPI to provide such a service. So does anybody have any questions on the legislative update? Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Board Member Miller. We really appreciate that. And if there aren't any objections, I would like to circle back now to item 3, upcoming events. Board Member Hankins.
Thank you. I could read this verbatim, but the district has been holding numerous summer events. I've been able to, luckily, to attend 3 or 4 of them, but there's 2 more that are coming up on July 10th at 5 o'clock at Fruzen. There's a make and take plant party. And maybe there's somebody who could, I can read it as it is, but maybe somebody explain. I know what it is, but if somebody has any more clarification. But anyways, it's a good way. I've been able to meet at several of the grade schools. BLA is having a summer splash-tastic on July 12th at noon. More school activities will be coming all summer long. Monday, July 8th is the Quarter Century Committee. We'll be holding a Scoopy Share night. The Quarter Century Club is our district employees with 25 years of service or more. This is a fundraiser to help offset the cost of the very nice banquet held each April to induct the new class of employees with 25 years of service. So come on out to Culver's on Monday for Scoopy night to show your support. Thank you. And this ends the events and announcements for tonight.
Thank you, Board Member Hankins. And that returns us to the reports to the board. Item 4B, academic achievement.
And I'll take that conversation. So from the superintendent's space, one of the things that I wanted to do is just remind everybody the main reason that's natural that we're here is for student achievement and academic achievement as well. And I would like just to put a huge thanks out to all of those who participated in our summer school enrollment. This was a huge undertaking for us. We, of course, had enrollment scheduled on that date as well. And so while students were coming in to enroll for our district earlier last month, we also partnered that same conversation with the possibilities of people enrolling for our summer school. By doing so, we have now increased our summer school to a high that I believe is a record for the school district of over 1,037 students. That is a huge accomplishment for the school district because that's continued student achievement that goes beyond the regular school year. Again, when we were going at this start, we were, thinking that we would possibly come in around, probably like 700 or 800 students because we always want to grow the summer school opportunities here in our school district. But to get over 1,000 plus students, again, over 1,037 students to participate in our summer school opportunity is a huge undertaking. I would also like to thank the enrollment office, Pupil Services for the work that they did there. I would like to thank Teaching and Learning for the work that transpired in helping us mold our curriculum. I like to thank the Human Resource Department for helping us get all the teachers hired for the space, as well as the Business Services Office and making sure that we have transportation scheduled for our students accordingly. This is a full-fledged opportunity that we have really centralized here in Beloit. True enough, we do take students from around the community, but that's where our doors are open, again, for all of our families. And again, without the work that came before all of the registration happened, of course, getting it organized, getting volunteers in place, asking our secretaries to come over to help us with it. Again, it was a huge undertaking from all departments in order for that to be both a successful day for enrollment, but also for summer school. And so that's my report for today. And again, I want to make sure I put that thanks into the atmosphere for everybody who had a huge part in that. Of course, we'd like to thank our parents for trusting us with their kids from, 7 o'clock in the morning to after 12 every day. Naturally, we want to thank the students for continuing with us throughout the summer. And so just a real quick word to all of the parents out there, please keep sending your kids to summer school. Naturally, it's a great opportunity for us to, work with the students throughout the year, as well as, of course, our hopes that the learning will continue beyond the summer. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison, and to everyone who contributes to those efforts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Also to the communications department as well, in case I missed them. They, of course, helped us communicate all of this information out. Naturally, they also help with translation. And my team knows that, of course, I appreciate everybody who helped in that space. So, again, thank you to the communications department as well.
Any questions for Dr. Garrison? Okay, that brings us to item 4C. And tonight I do have a brief statement. Beloit friends and board members, the School District of Beloit is currently working to achieve a zero deficit budget. Finding ways to cut about $11 million is daunting, challenging, and heartbreaking. Disappointment, distress, and sadness do not even come close to describing the pain we are feeling at this moment. By keeping our focus on the needs of the students and their success continues to give us hope and guidance. When making such reductions, we need to consider every possibility and weigh all outcomes. Feedback from the community, teachers, and employees helps us get to where we need to be. None of us have all the answers or all the solutions. Through thoughtful communication, we may learn new ideas and approaches to creative cost-cutting and possibly developing other fundraising opportunities. The members of the Board of Education have agreed to work towards our collective efforts. I have asked the board members to consider donating back to the School District of Beloit 10% of their monthly stipend. If board members wish to donate back more, they are free to do so. However, I understand and appreciate there are costs associated even with our positions as board members. While to some this may seem a nominal gesture, it is the unified effort that I hope will resonate. I have faith that our current situation is temporary. I am asking each of you to bring your imaginations, your ideas, and goodwill to work through this collective time and keeping our students in our hearts. Thank you. That brings us to item 5, public comment. Michelle, do we have public comment?
Yes, I have public comment from about 4 people in the room, and then I have about 7 or 8 to read.
Okay. Speakers will be announced and invited to the podium by the board secretary. Each person will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Should the individual require translation assistance, a translator may be of the individual's choosing or one provided by the district. Public comments requiring translation will be given 6 minutes. An individual's 3 minutes may be yielded to another individual. However, each person must complete a public comment card, indicate if speaking or yielding time, give the public comment card to the board secretary, and approach the microphone to state first name and that the 3 minutes are being yielded to another individual. An individual may speak on behalf of a group. However, no more than 2 people may yield his, her, or their time to any one speaker. Individuals wishing to comment are expected to comply with the following norms in order to maintain a respectful and orderly meeting and to prevent discussion of confidential matters in public forum. Comments should be directed to the members of the Board of Education and not district employees, students, or other members of the public in attendance at the meeting. Signage, banners, or other materials which impedes any person's view of the proceedings shall be relocated. Speech that is belligerent, disorderly, disruptive, repetitive, or which exceeds the allowable time permitted for each speaker is prohibited. Concerns or questions that entail the disclosure of identifying information regarding specific students are prohibited. Response from the board, if any, will be limited to clarifying inaccurate information, seeking additional information from the speaker, or acknowledging that the speaker has been understood. The board will not debate with an individual, and the board may not take action on an item raised during public comment that is not on the meeting notice or agenda. The chair will interrupt and rule an individual who violates any of these norms out of order. If ruled out of order by the chair, the individual's opportunity to address the board will end immediately and the microphone will be turned off. Thank you for your participation and courtesy. And Michelle, who do we have up first?
So the first person I have is Carol, and she has 3 minutes yielded by Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to express my concerns over the budget cutting process that has been occurring. I understand the needs and the issues in cutting a district budget. I was involved in 2 different school district budget advisory committees that were established with community members involved to review data and programming and make recommendations to the board about potential cuts. It's disappointing that nothing like this occurred this time. While it might be late in the game for that process to occur for this fall, I believe that it is the board's responsibility to look deeply into the issues and the problems that have been caused and will be caused by the decisions to close schools and cut staff and services. You are currently looking at cutting mostly by attrition based on the documents I reviewed, and maybe it would have been better if the comments would have been later, but exactly how is this going to affect the programming is my question. What are the plans for delivering the services that these staff have provided when they're not going to be replaced? How has all of this affected the integrity of programs like 4K, dual language, gifted and talented, the arts, sports, all of your programs? The impact of your decisions on current programming and services needs a deep dive and should be shared with the community. Let's take a look at the dual language immersion program, for example. I'm not saying that it's not a good program or that the services are not needed. However, the cuts and changes over the past few years have affected the integrity of the program design, and that needs to be evaluated. The program may need to be revised or restructured. I know, for example, that when the buildings were reconfigured last year, some of the DLI classrooms were made into split grade level classrooms. How can you successfully teach 2 grade levels in 2 languages? I was a teacher and an administrator, and I cannot even picture how that would educate students effectively. Also, if you look at the forward achievement data from 22 to 23, and I have a little sheet for you that Michelle will give to you later, you'll find that the English language learners population is performing worse than any other group assessed, and that the math scores were actually worse than the English language scores. Theoretically, the math scores should be less dependent on language. All of that before you even started splitting classrooms. So I would say things need to be looked at. I recommend that you quickly establish an advisory committee whose membership contains community members and representatives from the district of various buildings, grade levels, and programs to study all of the data and to do that deep dive and make recommendations for streamlining and improving the way services are being provided to our students and families. While this work will need to be done next year, I believe that it is a necessary and crucial step if you hope to pass a referendum anytime in the future. The community needs to know that you are willing to work to provide the best services possible with the resources at hand, and that you are willing to involve them in searching for the answers to these problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have James, and I have Kristen, who yielded her 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is James Hoy. I teach at Beloit Memorial, and I am a resident of Beloit. I am also one of the co-presidents of the BEA. There are currently over 60 open teaching positions in the school district of Beloit. Beloit faces a teacher shortage. Wisconsin does. The nation does. We have to do whatever we can to recruit new teachers to Beloit, and better yet, retain the teachers that we have. We're struggling to do that. The BEA understands that the district is in a tough financial position. However, the district continues to want to solve those financial problems by balancing the budget on the backs of teachers. I've had numerous board members and administrators tell me that's not happening. Let's recap the past few months. The The school board imposed a 4% cost of living increase for this past school year, which was less than half of the actual cost of living of 8%. In the spring, the board proposed a raise to the BEA for the next school year of 2%, which again is half the cost of living of 4% this year. I came to the board meeting and spoke to you a month ago about plans to double insurance costs for employees. Nothing happened, and that plan was implemented. Now, here we are with the district administration proposing 3 furlough days for employees. How is all of this not balancing the budget on your teachers' backs? The furlough proposal is flawed for many reasons. Number one, the plan amounts to a 1.6% decrease in pay for teachers and paras on 192-day contracts. It is a 1.4% decrease for employees on a 212-day contract. It's a 1.2% decrease for year-round employees. This means that those who make the most lose the least. Those who make the least lose the most as a percentage of their pay. Now, to be clear, I'm not advocating that we add days on, furlough days on for administrators. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm advocating that we scrap the entire proposal. Number two, the furlough days proposed in this plan are not PD days. Most of them are teacher work days. Why do we want to take more work time away from teachers? When does this administration and this school board think the work will be done? The work has to be done, and it always gets done. Let's be honest here. We know how it's going to be done. Teachers are going to go in and do that work on their own time, uncompensated. Is that the message we want to send to our teachers and the community? To be clear, I'm not advocating that we change the days for the furloughs. I'm advocating we scrap the plan entirely. The timing of this proposal is also flawed. As teachers, we just signed our contracts for next school year. They were due last month. And they stated that we will make no less than X amount. Here we are 1 month later, and the district does not want to honor the contracts they sent out. I understand the handbook language allows the furlough days to happen. It's in policy. But just because it is allowed doesn't make it right. On top of that, if a teacher wants to leave, let's say I want to leave now because I don't like this plan. As of yesterday, July 1st, I'm now penalized. I have to pay the district damages. This plan just came out on Friday. How do you hold teachers accountable and make them pay damages maybe because they decide they want to go to a different district now 3 days after this plan was proposed? To be clear, I'm not advocating that we change that. I'm advocating that we get rid of the entire proposal. This plan is not going to save the district anywhere near the amount of money the administration thinks it will. Allowing the employees to use vacation time and personal time to cover these days will greatly reduce the amount of money it will save. For the amount of stress, chaos, and resentment this proposal will create, it doesn't seem worth considering it the minimal amount of money that's actually going to save. If you allow all these things to happen, minimal cost of living increases, doubling the insurance cost, and now furlough days, you're asking teachers to work for less money next year. Is that the message you want to send your teachers and the community? I think we can all agree that academic achievement is a major challenge for our district. We need highly trained and qualified teachers in our classrooms to make any movement in this area. Continuing balancing the budget on the backs of your teachers is not going to keep or attract highly qualified teachers. I challenge the school board to ask for more information. What are the actual budget numbers? How much money has been saved with every cut? How much money will be saved because dozens of veteran teachers have left and will be replaced by brand new teachers? How much money has been saved at each specific building? How much at Keck? What are the specific detailed cuts? Do you have that information? I also challenge the board to show that you support your teachers. Find other cuts to make to come up with the money needed to cover this proposal. Or show the staff community that you support your teachers by using the district savings account, not a zero deficit budget. You know, because some things you have to compensate your teachers, and maybe you need to go into that savings account to do so. I acknowledge there are no easy answers or solutions to the financial problems this district faces. However, I do know that continually over and over asking your staff to bail out the district is not the best approach. And if the goal is to have highly qualified teachers in the classroom, this isn't going to work. Thank you.
We have
I'm so sorry. Board President Johnson, may I ask a clarifying question of Mr. Hoey? Are you saying that, first of all, thank you for your comments. Are you saying that you support the board passing a deficit budget? Please.
I would say yes, if that's what it takes. If there's not other cuts to make, which I think there could be out there, but if that's what it takes to compensate your teachers, I would say yes.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure I understood your request. Thank you.
Next, we have Stephanie.
I was just here 2 weeks ago speaking about the Grow Your Own scholarship. My name's Stephanie. I'm a resident of Beloit native, proud product of the Beloit school system. And it's been an honor and a privilege to work here for 23 years. I'm just pleading with you to take this off the table, the furlough days right now. Maybe revisit it if we have to at a later date. But last minute, it kind of gives everybody bad feelings. And also, I also want to advocate that if this has to be brought back on the table, that we take the paraeducators out of this, because these paraeducators have already lost a lot. They're not paid for spring break. They're not paid for winter break. They stretch their money, and it's just sad. So I'm just advocating that maybe this is taken off the table, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
That's all I have for in the room.
Any online submitted?
Yes, I have about 7.
Okay.
The first one I have is from Terry. I'm writing to express my concern about the potential reassignment of Mr. Saeed from Robinson Elementary. Mr. Saeed is Robinson Elementary. He takes great pride in his school and always greets everyone he sees as they arrive. Mr. Saeed always lends a helping hand to staff on top completing his required duties with attention to detail. There's never been any concern about his work performance, and has always picked up the slack from evening custodians. Mr. Saeed always encourages the students to do their best and be proud of being a cougar. He celebrates students and all their accomplishments, just as he takes pride in his whole building. He serves the whole child by supporting their emotional and social learning. He doesn't ignore the students. He interacts with them and sees them for themselves. He not only builds relationships with the students, he is there for the staff as well. Mr. Saeed has taken time to get to know me and asks about my daughters and how they are doing. Mr. Saeed always lends a helping hand when I need it. There's no reason for this change. He cares deeply for Robinson students, staff, and the building. He wants the best for everyone and has always done his job. He's the only African-American male in our building, and he makes connections with our students because they know he cares. Mr. Saeed doesn't want to leave Robinson and wishes to retire from this building. The next message is from Liliana. I am writing this letter not only to support Mr. Saeed Amin and his work at Robinson Elementary School. I'm a parent and employee at Robinson School. I have seen Mr. Saeed's positive impact to the students and building firsthand, and I cannot imagine Robinson not having the firm foundation of Mr. Saeed there next year. Some may feel that a custodian isn't that important to a school and that their role is to upkeep the building. Mr. Saeed does that, but he also does so much more. He teaches the students respect. He talks to students about their actions and why some things are not acceptable. Teachers can utilize the "let's not make a mess for Mr. Saeed," to which students respond by cleaning up after themselves. When there's a problem like an accidental spill or vomit, he responds fast, but always in a caring way to clean up the area and make sure the student is truly okay. He's also a large part of the Robinson family. By saying this, I don't mean the teachers and staff. I mean the whole Robinson family. He attends all after-school concerts and events held at the school to support the children and the teachers. He has built connections with parents and students alike. He's an amazing role model for Robinson students, especially when sometimes it's hard to find those amazing role models from your neighborhood. Mr. Saeed has been a part of my life, my children's lives, my students' lives. I know Mr. Saeed for the past 16 years since my son attended Robinson, then my daughter, and worked with him for the past 4 years. Saeed always has a smile and willing to do anything to help. He's an outstanding employee who is celebrated for his hard work and dedication each and every day to our building. He takes the time to talk to the kids, have that relationship with them. Students admire him, and he's such a positive role model. He cares about student academics and more, has a relationship with students and families. He doesn't want to leave Robinson and wants to retire from Robinson. He also has more seniority. Our building will not be the same without him. He's always picking up the slack from second shift. It is not fair that he is such a nice guy. Please help to reconsider this unspeakable decision that will undoubtedly affect every life he has touched over the many years. As a school district employee, his Robinson family stands with him. Students love him, and it will not be the same without him. If you have heard many platitudes on how amazing Mr. Saeed is, I want you to remind you that he won the School District of Beloit All-Star Spotlight in June 2023 for his work at Robinson. I also want to remind you that he came in second place in a National Janitor of the Year contest in 2016 due to his amazing work and connections with the staff, students, and families at Robinson. If you are not familiar with this, here's the link to one of the many articles about it. In my opinion, I understand that budgets can be tough to balance and changes must happen, but I do not think Mr. Saeed leaving would be a positive change for Robinson. Truthfully, I can only see this as a devastating failure to Robinson Elementary, to the students, staff, and most importantly, to the families at Robinson. Thank you. Next, I have an email from Rena, I'm sorry. I just want to take a minute to talk about Mr. Saeed. I cannot believe that Hess is trying to remove him from Robinson School. There is no reason for it. He is a fantastic worker, and he always puts others before himself. He's the only African-American male in our school. He is a role model for many. The students connect with him. He cares deeply about all the students and their academic performance. He engages with them in all aspects of education. He pushes students to do and be their best academically. He's a great human being. He always has a smile on his face and a song in his heart. He never complains about anything. He makes it easy to come into work early. Besides, I do believe he has seniority. There hasn't been a problem with his work performance either. He is always there for students and staff. Everyone looks forward to seeing Mr. Saeed. He is the backbone of Robinson. Please reconsider removing him. Students and staff would greatly appreciate him staying at Robinson. Thank you. The next one is from Anna. I'm reaching out with public concerns about the relocation of Mr. Saeed from Robinson Elementary next year, as there is no reason for this change, and it would negatively impact our school as a whole in a multitude of ways. He has become one of the most prominent and consistent figures at Robinson Elementary forever, and I can't imagine coming to work without him. Mr. Saeed is one of the most caring, conscientious, and hardworking people I have ever met. He always goes above and beyond. I have worked at 3 other schools in the Beloit School District, and Robinson Elementary is by far the cleanest one I have worked at because of Mr. Saeed. That being said, Mr. Saeed's impact on Robinson Elementary goes far beyond keeping it clean, as he has formed strong connections with every single student and teacher here. All the students absolutely love him because while he is working hard to keep our school clean, he still finds the time to get to know all the students personally so that he can help them succeed socially, emotionally, and academically. He is a strong male role model of color for many of our students. Therefore, I urge you to reconsider forcing Mr. Saeed to leave Robinson Elementary, as relocating him would have a negative impact on every single student's social, emotional, and academic success. This next one is from Gina. She wrote this letter to Hess before about an employee issue, and she's hoping, and am hoping you can listen and help in this matter. I am aware that Hess has nothing to do with employee hiring or placement, but I am hopeful that with your help, this situation can be remedied. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for the incredible work that Mr. Saeed Amin has done here at Robinson. He has genuinely been a robust role model for our students, particularly African American boys, showing them that he cares about his job and stresses the importance of reading and academic growth. In addition, his quiet demeanor and words of encouragement to students who are struggling behaviorally have not gone unnoticed. I am saddened to hear he was transferred to Gaston School against his request to stay at Robinson. Mr. Amin's dedication to supporting students both in their achievements and during challenging behavioral moments has not gone unnoticed. His hard work has been recognized by the district through various rewards, a testament to his strong work ethic and unwavering commitment to our school community. Mr. Amin's presence will be sorely missed in our building, especially during these times of transition, when several staff members, including administration, pupil services staff, and many staff members are leaving. His early arrival to ensure a clean building and his encouragement for others to take pride in their work have made a lasting impact on all of us. His departure will undoubtedly be felt by students, families, and colleagues alike. When staff, students, and families are asked why they think what they think about Mr. Saeed, you will hear the words caring and supportive, and that he is the heart of Robinson. He takes pride in his work, and his connections with students and the Robinson community will be intensely missed. In my 25 plus years of working in this district, having individuals who have worked in the district for 10 plus years and who are committed to helping the district be the best that it can be is something that should be celebrated rather than moving an individual who has never been written up to another placement. This move had nothing to do with his job performance or the cleanliness of Robinson. I would appreciate it if you would reconsider your decision. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The next one is from Stephanie. Good evening, board members. As an educator in the school district of Beloit, I do not support the proposed 3 days of furlough as a solution to balancing the budget. These furlough days are affecting all staff, and those with lower salaries stand to lose the most. The 3 days would result in a 1.5625% decrease in pay on a 192-day contract. It impacts teachers and paras by a higher percent than any other group. For example, people on a 212-day contract lose 1.4%. Year-round employees with 3 furlough days is only a 1.154% loss. But any loss of salary is unacceptable and should not even be a consideration. The most valued employees that have direct contact with the students on a daily basis are the ones that lose the most. I personally know of 6 teachers who have left the district this year, 2 even taking a pay cut because they do not feel valued. And with the 60-plus unfilled positions our district currently has, proposing to increase our insurance costs, pay us for 3 less days, and not even discuss a decent raise, you will be hard-pressed to attract or even retain quality educators for these positions. I urge you to look more into some of the higher-paid positions at Keck and consider how it was possible that several years ago we had more students in the district and only a third of the administrators and directors that are currently employed out of Keck. How was it that our district operated successfully back then with less students? But with less students and staff, we now need more Keck employees. Please stop trying to balance the budget on the backs of your teachers who are the lifeblood of this district. Thank you. The next one is from Tim. Dear members of the Beloit School Board of Education, I am writing tonight to address the proposal to impose 3 furlough days for the 24-25 school year. I just completed my 31st year in the school district and having served as president of the BEA for the past 23 years. Proposing 3 furlough days is the absolute worst idea I've ever heard. This proposal will further push our salaries below the cost of inflation and comes on the heels of doubling the employee share of the health insurance premium for next year. Enough is enough. Subpar Subpar pay increases and balancing the budget on the backs of your dedicated employees is not the way to attain and retain staff. Attract and retain staff. It does just the opposite, as evidenced by our district continuing to lose veteran staff to other districts. We need highly trained and qualified staff in our district who stay here and work with our students year in and year out. Proposing furlough days does not make people want to work here. Beloit is an excellent district. We need to keep it that way. We need to keep it moving forward, and you won't until you appreciate the staff working here and not make us pay for the budget woes. I understand that times are tough and the budget crisis is real. However, there are still things to consider before taking away from employees. One suggestion, look carefully at those positions needed to be filled. You surely will not hire in new people at the same cost as those who previously held those positions. This will generate savings that can be used instead of furloughing employees. I hope that a very careful examination of those unfilled positions may be completed and any position that we can possibly do without has been frozen or eliminated. My next suggestion requires some history to provide background. When I started teaching 31 years ago, Beloit had about 3,000 more students than we currently have. We also functioned with a superintendent, assistant superintendent / business manager, personnel director, curriculum director, and assistant curriculum director. Today, we have ballooned the staff in this building while not keeping it proportional to the decline in student enrollment over time. Please look carefully at every position that does not directly interact with students. We need to be as streamlined as possible to make it through this crisis while maintaining the high standards that our students and families deserve. Another suggestion is to stand up for the employees of the district and take the $800,000 from the district savings account to cover this cost. This would send a positive message to all employees that we are valued and buy some much needed good with all of us. Everyone in this room understands that we are in dire financial circumstances, but asking your staff to give up 3 days' pay by taking away valuable classroom work and planning time will not be received well by the staff and is truly a slap in the face of your dedicated employees. This prep and planning time will still have to occur, and it will fall on all of us to do it without the compensation we deserve. We are all dedicated professionals. Please treat us that way. And the last one I have is from Julie. Dear school district board members, when teachers asked for a fair 8% wage and you imposed 4%, we trusted you to keep your word and work to balance budget and funding without making teachers suffer even more. If you furlough 3 days' salary in the coming year, you are demoting us and not adhering to the salary ladder in the agreement with the BEA. A furlough for paras and teachers will hurt morale in our district, which already suffers, which is obvious in our very high teacher and para turnover. Implementing a furlough will decrease morale even more, and it decreases trust that we had in you to make decisions regarding district funding and our students' education. How are we supposed to trust you moving forward? How are you going to attract and maintain a staff of qualified teachers by treating us this way? Some of my colleagues have been approached by other districts who are pouncing on this opportunity to poach great teachers with promises of signing bonuses and higher salaries. Some of my colleagues in their first few years as teachers have to work more than one job to pay their rent on a one-bedroom apartment. Furloughing 3 days is a big deal. My colleagues like working with our students and our colleagues. They do not want to leave, but it is the decisions the board makes that affect teachers and results in us taking jobs elsewhere. What happens to our students when there are not enough teachers in Beloit to run a district? I implore you to find other creative ways to save money and to not furlough teachers and paras. Imposing furlough days on teachers and paras is inequitable. Teaching is a job that requires educators to do the job regardless of contract time, and teachers put in countless hours beyond the contracted day. If you impose 3 days of furlough on teachers, you're ultimately requiring us to work even more without pay. We still have to plan, grade, adhere to special students' plans, and communicate with families whether it is paid day or not. Many teachers and many paras live paycheck to paycheck and depend on full wages and even second jobs to pay our bills. In reality, a furlough is not good for any staff. Instead, you've considered other ways to cut costs have you considered other ways to cut costs and save money? Has our district considered terminating contracts with high-cost programs like 7 Mindsets, Ford NGL, and so many more? Maybe our district should freeze the hiring of paid presenters from outside of the district. If we don't have money, maybe we shouldn't put up visiting presenters in hotels, pay for flights, car rentals, etc. We have very qualified staff who have been trained and could work in teams to incorporate SEL in content areas across grade levels, and our high school staff works as a cohesive team with our academy coach and could strategically move forward with what academies strive to be for our unique Beloit community with our own leaders. Please consider creating a team that includes more teachers to brainstorm effective ways to move our district forward so our students get the best possible education while still balancing budgets. Please do not implement a furlough for teachers and paras. Please find other creative ways to save money that do not encourage teachers to leave our district. Thank you for your time, Julie. And that was the last one.
Thank you, Michelle. That brings us to item 6A, the preliminary 2024-25 budget status.
Thank you, Board President Johnson. So tonight we will have a presentation as it pertains to our preliminary 2024-25 budget status. As many of you in the room are keenly aware that the School District of Beloit is in a funding conversation. At the state level, we are definitely in a funding crisis. Here in the school district, there has been many conversations since this administration has arrived as it pertains to what else could we do to continue to balance our budgets. The reality is there's only a few ways that we can actually get money in the school district. One, through a referendum, and then two, some other forms of state support in increasing per pupil expenditures. Those two ways are the primary ways in which a school district can get funds. Minus those two ways, it becomes more extremely hard to make a balanced budget happen, especially when we have year-over-year cost, including with the cost of inflation, CPI included. One of the things that I want to let everyone in this room know is, like I stated before, my goal is to, of course, try to bring a balanced budget to the conversation. And I understand the hardships that comes with that conversation, because since I've arrived in this conversation, this is what we've been. We've been in this conversation. And so my goal is to, again, get us to a balanced budget. And if we get to a balanced budget, a lot of these things, even the furlough conversation, could absolutely go away. My hopes is that as we work together, this is a partnership, not only between the school district and the administration and the teachers, but it's also a partnership with our community. Our community has to be a partner in this conversation. The adversaries that one may argue that we may have here in the school district of Beloit, we have to figure out better ways to meet in the middle so that we can come together to figure out what is it that we can do better to be better community partners as well as partners with our community. And so that's something that we will continue to have to strive towards in this conversation. There is no way that one person will have all the knowledge of what should happen. So this takes a complete team to bring any possibilities of change to fruition. So the more we come together, the more we figure out together, the more I believe it makes it a little bit easier for all of us to have these conversations. As a district administrator, I can tell you that it is my goal to continue to work with all parties in this conversation, and that definitely does not exclude the teachers. As many of you are aware, I have, of course, met with the powers that be in the teachers union, and I will continue to do so to figure out possible ways to stay abreast in this conversation. My hopes, again, is that we can continue to work together in this space, but I do understand the hardships that we're up under and that we also are placing in the conversation with our staff. With that being stated, our preliminary budget will go through a lot of different assumptions. And so one of the things that I've mentioned in the previous conversation is that this is like a pendulum at times. Wish we can say this is what the budget is going to be, and then it kind of just stops. But unfortunately, things are continuously moving, and with a budget is never like, static, where it's just what it's going to be. We would hope that over time we will get to a better understanding around how the budget helps us move things forward, and this is what this budget will present. Again, the board does not have to make any decisions on the preliminary budget tonight, but I did want to make sure we had the conversation as it stands as a district. Mr. Chady and I, and of course team, Mrs. Elwood as well, have been working towards this work for quite some time now. Again, Mr. Chady will go over a lot of the information in the presentations, and throughout the presentation, if there's a space where the board would like us to kind of stop and ask questions, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the table now so we won't have to kind of run through everything and then try to ask the questions at the very end. So if there's a slide or two that you want more clarity around, please feel free to, of course, get direction from the board president, and we can ask that question and keep the knowledge kind of moving through the program, through the presentation versus trying to capture it all at the end. And so with that being stated, I'll turn over to Mr. Chady to take us through the preliminary budget conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Before I begin, I'll give attributes to Stephanie Elwood, our Director of Finance. Stephanie's been doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, trying to put the pieces of the budget together to help establish this foundation and the presentation tonight. So my appreciation to Stephanie for her work there. Second, just a reminder that the preliminary budget's before the board this evening more as an informational purpose, perhaps some discussion purposes, seeking no approval on the budget tonight, because there is still work to be done, and we'll see that as we go through. Our intention is to bring a revision of the preliminary budget back to the committee and the board on August 6th, I believe, is the first meeting in August for, again, review and adoption at that point in time. So some key budgetary factors that we'll speak about that play a role in the financial numbers that we'll see. First and foremost, we'll start with declining membership. Our 3-year average that we estimate to be 6,247. Last year it was 6,333. Just a reminder that membership is resident students within the school district of Beloit attending Beloit School District, any other school district via open enrollment or an independent public charter school, i.e. the Lincoln Academy. So you'll see the membership numbers declining through the years, 6,288 a couple of years back in the 22-23 school year, and then estimated to be at 6,192 here for the 24-25 school year. In all honesty, personally, I think that estimate may be a little bit on the low side, and the reality might come in a bit higher, but I'd prefer to estimate on revenues on the low end and then have additional revenues come in October than estimate high and have fewer revenues to complicate our matters. We do utilize the maximum revenue limit per member within the revenue limit at $11,325.36. That does include the $325 per member increase as provided in current state law and part of the recent biennial budget process, and then of course the veto or the veto that Governor Evers enacted to provide that $325 per member for the foreseeable years to come. We are we'll be using the remainder of the ESSER 3 funding to cover allowable costs here in July, August, and September. That grant expires on September 30th. We do have funding available there yet, though the funding's really been allocated for the HVAC improvement project at Beloit Memorial High School, and then some custodial costs and some other ancillary costs as well. But we do anticipate utilizing that full grant amount by September 30th, and quite honestly, may occur sooner. The district's equalized property value, we're forecasting a 10% increase. It's kind of it's a throw the dart, honestly. Anticipated increase. Last year it was a 16.07% increase, and it's been a good, strong increase for a number of years now. 10% I think seems reasonable. Just to put this, just kind of connect the dots on this, this increase in the equalized property value is from the Department of Revenue. It's the equalized property value of the entire school district of Beloit. Has no bearing on the property reassessment process currently underway with the city of Beloit. Two separate, completely different things. So just to kind of point that out. This middle bullet point talks about our general state aid. When we were building the budget, we knew that the Department of Public Instruction would be releasing their state aid estimate yesterday on July 1st. As such, and just given the timing, we left the state aid amount at the same value it was in the 23-24 school year, $61,031,000 and change. The DPI estimate that we received yesterday is a decrease in state aid of about $540,000. So we'll need to adjust our revenues accordingly for that. And that will essentially shift the burden a bit from the state and more to the local property taxpayer, unfortunately. The state aid estimate will change between now and October 15th. The question is always, does it go up or down and by how much? But with all certainty, the amount, the amount of the aid estimate will change. Salary adjustments are built into the budget as present. We're in the midst of negotiations with the BEA. For the BEA leadership's perspective, the amount of the adjustments that are currently built into the budget are those of the board's last proposal to the BEA, and we'll leave it at that between the parties given the ongoing negotiations there. The budget does include the monthly health insurance contribution increasing from 2% to 4% for all employees that participate in the health insurance proposals. And then additionally, there are changes to the HSA remittance schedule as well. Certainly not as desire on the part with regards to the HSA remittance schedule, but in the past, the district would contribute the full value of the HSA upfront in the first month of employment, and now we're going to distribute that on a per pay period basis. A couple of helps to the district there. One, from a cash flow perspective, and then two, for those employees that are hired, perhaps their tenure with the school district of Beloit is rather short term, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever. They would only get that portion of the HSA contribution instead of having the full value up front, and then those dollars departing the district with the employees. So it does provide some modest savings.
Mr. Chady?
Yes.
Oh, I have a question on that one.
Sure.
Now, earlier tonight, I heard that this has been implemented already. Has this already been implemented? And if not, when do you need a board vote on this? By what date do you need to know how the board feels on this?
So the implementation of the percentage increase technically goes into effect September 1st, however, was built into the open enrollment process for health insurance that employees throughout the district did late last month, and I believe that that's closed. Changes to the HSA remittance schedule would also go into effect September 1st. I'll comment a little bit about, does the board vote on that? I guess that's the discretion of the board. Along those lines, if that's the discretion of the board, there's lots and lots of reductions that the board could perhaps vote on. I think we're getting a little deep in the weeds there. It may significantly impact the timing of the budget leading up to that late October timeframe. But I work at the liberty of the board and Dr. Garrison, so we'll do what you request. Any other questions there? Okay.
I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
You noted the employee monthly health insurance contribution increased from 2% to 4%, so doubling. Could you give us an idea, just for context, of within Rock County or surrounding areas, what that typical monthly health insurance contribution is for employees?
Yeah, so back during 2000 whatever, Act 11, that was kind of the downfall of the bargaining power of bargaining units other than for base wages. Yeah, thank you, Act 10. Thank you. The general consensus: most districts in the state and the state employees increased to 12% of the monthly premium contributions. So I can't speak specifically as to what Parkview's doing or what Turner's doing, or Janesville, I believe, just moved from 8 to 10 or 10 to 12. They did a 2% increase to one of those options as well.
So the state average is about 12%.
I would say probably 85+% of the districts in the state are at the 12% mark, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Continuing on the last couple of bullets here, we have built into the budgetary estimates. We know that there will be expenses to support School District of Beloit residents that are attending the expanded independent charter school, i.e. the Lincoln Academy. My understanding is that the last two remaining grade levels in their 4K through 12 programming will come online in the 24-25 school year. Likely will capture some School District of Beloit residents and increased expenses as a result of that. And then there is a new local private school voucher option that also comes online in the 24-25 school year. OLA, Our Lady of Assumption Catholic School, becomes a private school voucher as well. So we've done our best to try to estimate the number of School District of Beloit students that will be participating in those programs, and then the dollar costs attributed to those as well. And then lastly, we did ask all schools and departments to decrease their budgets by 10% with regards to their supplies and other budgetary spending. Many hit that mark. A few went above that mark. There are a few that were a bit shy of that mark. And we intend to be looking at those that were below the mark to see, do we need to put that squeeze on those schools a little bit more, or perhaps is there some validity in leaving their budgetary reductions as is. So those are the big factors. The next few slides I won't speak to in a lot of depth because this goes back to that May 21st school board meeting and those presentations with regards to proposals or ideas with regards to making reductions within the budgets. Many of these haven't been filled, obviously, because of reductions and attritions, and there may actually be some additional opportunities to come. It's not really what we want to do, to be honest with you. We never want to lose positions, and more importantly, the people that go with it. But the labor market is challenging. We need to do a better job of trying to get high-quality staff hired to fill some of our vacant positions. But certainly some of these positions are likely okay to go. So again, this goes back to that May 21st presentation, and I'm just going to fly through the slides. These two items. Oops. Yep.
I see Board Member Levy has her hand up.
My bad.
Oh.
My apologies. I didn't take it down from my last question.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you. So that slide dealt with the compensation and benefits, maintaining class sizes. We just talked about the health insurance impacts. There's the facilities impacts as well. So currently in the last year's 23-24 budget included a $550,000 transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement trust fund. If finances provided for that opportunity, and we're still crunching those numbers to see if we'll be able to make that transfer for 23-24, but more importantly, we took the $550,000 transfer out of the 24-25 because it's not there. Some other notations here with regards to the facility changes. You can see reductions in staff, reductions in changes in the HES custodial. We worked with HES. We strived for a 10% reduction in our expenses there. Quite honestly, we're a bit on the plus side of that, a bit more than that. That did require a lot of changes in custodial staffing throughout the district, both with a reduction of staffing at some of the schools, complete reduction of staffing at some buildings, and significant reduction of HES custodial staffing here at COLAC as well. Prior comments from public comments perhaps somewhat address that as well, but keep in mind that's a staffing decision of our contracted vendor, HES, and not of the school district. Budget reductions listed here, again, from that May 21st meeting with regards to programming, instruction, resources, special ed to the best of our ability. We have captured these items in the budget presentation to follow here. We'll certainly go back through and make sure that we have those at the appropriate dollar values as well. Maintaining current course offerings from back in that May 21st, and then other reductions as well as listed. So some of the big picture budget strategies, expenses, we've reduced staff positions with a focus to look on vacant positions. Not to say that every vacancy was eliminated, because we certainly know that we can't do that. But we attempted to look at this from the standpoint of how can we reduce our staffing positions to better align with our reductions in enrollment. But more importantly, to actually make those changes with marginal reductions to actually cutting staff. We've had very few non-renewals of certified staff. Unfortunately, we've had a good number of exits from employees, but that's, I don't want to say they decided to leave, right? But at the same token, there's probably valid reasons why they did. Some of those may be district related. We talked about the department and school budget expenses.
Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a question.
Okay.
It's real this time.
Okay.
If we could go back to the budget reduction slide that says maintain current course offerings. So my concern with the discontinuation of middle school choir, what is the, and this, anyone can answer this from the admin team, please, whoever has the information, what is the plan to make sure that we are not killing the choir program by eliminating this position? Because that, the pipeline for your high school choir comes at the middle school level. So what is the plan to ensure that we maintain a choir?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just so you know, since we've had our conversation in May, our choir teacher has moved forward in signing her contract, and she's looking forward to having that 0.5 at both middle schools, just as our orchestra and band teachers do. With her licensure and talents in choir, as the students have a requirement for music education for grade 6, it's going to allow her to lean into choir and singing. And then in addition to that, we're going to be working with her to think about other opportunities. For example, students that are interested in choir and singing could participate in the orchestra and band concerts. And then also we'll be working across the departments with the high school choir teacher to think about how to bridge.
Great. And then just one additional point that I thought of as you were speaking. Thank you for that updated information. Is there the possibility of having like a choir club so that we can maintain that interest and that space for students to participate outside of the classroom? I would just hate to see a program die because we reduce staffing.
I actually think that, I'm surprised, Ms. Levy. I think that's a great idea. So I will bring that back to the music department and see if there's interest in that for sure, but definitely will advocate for it because I think that's a wonderful idea.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Continuing on, let's see, department and school budget expense reductions. We talked about that 10% expectation from them. And then the possibility of furloughing up to 3 days to reduce personnel costs. At the same token, retaining positions. So revenues, we talked about that earlier as well, that the plan is, of course, to utilize the full revenue limit per member of that $11,325 and not forget about the 36 cents as well. The district has utilized this slide in prior years, and I think it's a great pictorial of how the revenue limit authority is calculated. The revenue limit worksheet's rather large and complex, and this does a really good job of summarizing that, so we'll just kind of walk through it real quick. The resident membership utilizes a 3-year average, so the 6,247 members there, we multiply that by the per pupil amount of $11,325.36, and that generates $70,749,524 available within the Revenue Limit Authority. Currently, there is no declining enrollment hold harmless exemption in the Revenue Limit Authority. There's the possibility of that changing between now and October, though I think that that may be on the low end. We do have one-time non-recurring exemptions of just over 3.5, and they're listed at the bottom of the page there. We do receive a $974,000 just under that declining enrollment exemption. We're estimating an $80,000 exemption with regards to prior year open enrollment students that were not counted in the pupil count report. We can re-levy for some refunded or rescinded taxes. We know that to be about $25,225. And then private school voucher program payments of just over $2.4 million are there as well. So add all of those up, it equates out to about $3.5 million in those non-recurring exemptions, no recurring exemptions. So the total Revenue Limit Authority reflected there $74,250,336, and you'll see that again.
Board Member Levy?
Thank you. Really quickly, I just have a question for clarification on the furlough days that are proposed. That is for all staff, correct?
It is drafted as an all staff, but I don't recall, and I got to look correct. So it does not impact our hourly paras, security officers. Thank you. Yeah.
So it eliminates paras and security officers.
Those positions are not contracted or expected to work on the 3 furlough days that we are anticipating to utilize.
Got it. So they would not be impacted.
Correct.
And then my other question, and I'm making an inference to what you said, so I just want to pause and make sure that I understood you correctly. Are furloughs being suggested as opposed to layoffs, or to hopefully prevent layoffs, or did I take too great a leap?
No. So one of the things that I've tried to, that is a great leap since you, okay, that was a good, so let me just start with saying, with the furloughs, there's still opportunities for staff to, of course, if they choose to recuperate their funds. On the other hand, the conversation then becomes, are we going to possibilities of decreasing days? And if we decrease days, then we're talking about automatically decreasing overall salaries. And so the goal is to not go there just yet. That's not where we want to be at all. But these are the conversations that comes with year over the year, $10 million, $10 million, $10 million. And so at some point, our school district has to come to grips with, if it's year over year $10 million that we have to make up, there's a lot of conversations that we will have to have in order for this to actually work, minus funds coming from the state and or the support from our community. And so that's the way I would like to explain it for now.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, one, I wasn't speaking to something that is not a possibility, and two, I don't want to panic anyone and put the cart before the horse. But it sounded like to me that furlough days, which no one is excited about, could be a preventative measure to avoid having a conversation about layoffs. Am I following that correctly, or am I speaking out of turn?
No, you're not. You're not following. You're not speaking out of turn. Number one, because you're a board member, so you can say that. Yeah. We don't want to continue with the conversations around layoffs and cuts. At some point, we have to provide a fair and equitable education for all of our students and families, and so our teaching staff, we have to do our best with maintaining as close to that conversation as possible. So additional layoffs is something that we're not there yet. But as we continue to have these conversations around the possibilities of budgets and minus the funding, these are just the steps that we want to kind of work through before we have to go to the layoff conversation. As Mr. Chady has mentioned, just to be sure, as Mr. Chady has mentioned in a few slides from the beginning, we've made a lot of cuts through attrition, which is true. That's the way you want to make a lot of cuts before you start saying more people and more people and more people. That's what any district administrator would want to tackle first. But as we have had this conversation now for the past 2 going on 3 years, these are now the conversation where it's going to start heavily impacting staff. And so that we're not trying to lay off more people. The furlough is a conversation that we're having, that we're moving into currently. However, that's the way I would like to answer the question for now.
Thank you so much.
Board Member Miller?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a point really quickly. On the slide, let me see what slide number it is, where you've got the revenue limit. I think it's slide 10 of 23. Yep, that's the one on the bottom where it says private school vouchers at $2.4 million. Later on, there's the pie chart. And I just, for the purposes of contextualizing the conversation, because I'm going to wait till the end with a few other questions, we're spending about 7.5% of our total budget on state vouchers, private schools, as in addition to our local independent private charter school. Is that right? So about 7.5% of our $104 million budget?
It's probably higher than that, and we'll talk about that when we get to the expense slide.
Right, so closer to like 10%. And we're also paying around $10 million a year to fully fund ourselves special education because the state only funded it, was at 25%.
Yeah, it's moving
on
up.
The slide, though.
Yeah.
Which it's supposed to be 2/3, right, and has never been. Okay, so the reason that I'm asking this at this point in the presentation is I think a lot of us are going to have questions later, and I want to kind of like, at least in my mind, understand what are the things we can and cannot control. And one of the cannot control pieces, at least for this budget cycle, is like the gross negligence that our state has exercised across public school funding in Wisconsin is particularly harmful to Beloit because of the charter school legislation. But I do think that there are some can control pieces here that I'm excited to talk about. So it's kind of like contextualizing what do we need to advocate for in terms of change, because this is like totally unacceptable in terms of how we fund public schools, and what are the things we can control right now to possibly mitigate some of this. And so that was the purpose of my question and clarifying. So thank you for the opportunity.
Any other questions right now? Thank you.
Okay, I'll continue on. Slide on the revenue limit membership. You know, probably not surprising to anybody. And again, membership is a reflection of students that reside within the school district of Beloit and attend a public educational opportunity either here within the district through open enrollment or through an independent charter school. The revenue limit utilizes a 3-year average of these last 3 numbers. So you can see that. As I look at this slide, and I haven't really dug into this, but it does kind of look odd to me that we went from 68.43 to 62.63 and then back up to 64.51. I don't know. That's the number that the DPI has on file. That's what was reported in prior years, but it looks a bit strange. This slide speaks to the revenue limit, tax levy, the general aid implications, and this is really probably important from a property tax perspective. So what I'd like to do is, instead of speaking a lot about the verbiage above, we'll focus on the pictorial here at the bottom. Our revenue limit authority as current is $74,250,000. So you take the revenue limit, then you subtract out the state aids that come to the district through equalization aid and high poverty aid, and you can see those numbers reflected there. State general aid, $61,031,204, but again, that was a 23-24 value. The aid estimate received by the Department of Public Instruction yesterday is about a $540,000 decrease from that. So then over here on the right, after you take your revenue limit, subtract state aids, you end up with your tax levy amounts. Currently, the tax levy would be distributed as follows. The general fund, about $11.9 million. Fund 38, our non-referendum approved debt, $965,000. Levy Fund 39, that should be not Fund 30, Fund 39, just over $105,000. The Community Service Fund, Fund 80, about $250,000. Now let's go back to that state aid. Again, the state aid estimate that we received from the DPI yesterday is about $540,000 less. That then will increase the general fund tax levy from the 11.9 to about 12.5 million. So when state aid goes down, the amount within the revenue limit, the amount that we have, the full revenue limit authority doesn't change. But what changes is who pays how much. So when state aid goes down, that puts greater burden on the local property tax base. Between now and October 15th is when the DPI will certify the actual state aid amount. We know it'll change. The question is always, which way does it go? Does it go up for us, which we prefer, or does it further decrease, which we hope to avoid? Questions on that side before I go on?
I just want to make sure we note that the property tax or the levies that happen with the property taxes this year in the city would not impact the school district.
Correct. The city reassessment process has no bearing on the school district. It doesn't generate any additional dollars for the school district. It may impact how much of the proportional share of the property taxpayers within the city of Beloit to the school district, but the school district doesn't generate any additional dollars from it. It simply helps distribute the property, the tax levy amongst the various individual parcels. So we can talk more about that perhaps at a future presentation as well. So these are the revenue sources that we have in place for 24-25. Looking at the columns going down, probably the easiest, our general fund, $87.2 million, our special education fund, $17.1 million total for our operational purposes, $104.3 million. Looking at some of the individual roles, we kind of call out this general state aid here in the middle, 65.06%, other state sources, 13.35%, so 78.41% of the revenues to operate the school district in the coming year currently forecasted to come from the state of Wisconsin, an additional 7% from federal sources, so really 85+% of the budget is state or federally funded, which puts about 15% then on the local property tax, currently 12.72%. To put this in perspective, our 23-24, the school year just completed, had budgeted revenues of $98.2 million as compared to this coming school year, 24-25, of $87.2 million. So a decrease in revenues of $11 million. The lion's share of that is ESSER funding that has been utilized throughout 23-24, which will no longer be available. Other changes elsewhere as well, but just to kind of point that out, that revenues are currently forecasted to be down about $11 million. Pie charts with regards to revenues by source, you could see the vast majority, 79.4% coming from the state. The federal's in there, 14.2% or so from the local. Revenue for special education is here as well. Of course, the lion's share of revenue for special education is a result of the general fund transfer from Fund 10 that makes up about 62%. And Board Member Miller, I think this is probably where you noted that the state currently is forecast to contribute about 25.2%. That may change as well. Yeah. Then we can look at the object expenses, and again, we can look, we'll look both at the columns and we'll come back and look at some of the rows as well. So our general fund expenses currently forecasted for 24-25 to be $94.2 million. Special education, 17.1 total expenditures of 111. and I just want to go back real quick and let's just do a comparison on that total. So 111, but yet our revenues are forecasted to be at 104.3. You know, right there, $7 million or so deficit that we're still struggling with and challenging to work through. Talking about some of the rows specifically up top, our row 100 salaries and 200 benefits. You add up these percentages over here on the right, and they exceed 60% of the budget, which in all honesty is a bit low in comparison to other districts. Typically, that'll be around the 75% mark, probably plus or minus 3-4% in each direction. But one of the things that causes our percent of budget to go down is really found in the 300 purchase services row. And that's where we have about $16 million at the parts of the School District of Beloit to goes to provide for services provided to School District of Beloit resident students that are attending through open enrollment, through the independent charter school, or through voucher school programs. So essentially, School District of Beloit resources are being used to employ staff in those other institutions to educate our kids. So if we really factor that into the 60% currently in salary and benefits, that would likely put us up in that mid-70 range where it's pretty typical that school districts would be. Expenses by function are also listed here. And again, you know, taking a look at the top, instructional support, you know, 60 plus $61 million is there. And again, that's about 60% of the budget. More importantly, I would say let's come down to the bottom three rows where we've got instructional service payments, private school voucher, and charter school payments. You add up these values here, it's about $16 million, and that's essentially, again, the cost that the School District of Beloit incurs to pay for Beloit resident students attending programs outside of our district through other public institutions. Pie chart again about the expenses by function. Our fund balance analysis, I know that this slide has a little bit of revisions on it from what the public has seen in the past. We've changed it so that it had a beginning fund balance amount. So if we look at the actual estimated 23-24, we ended the year a year ago, September 30th of 2023, with a fund balance of $9,647,666. This change in fund balance row essentially would reflect the surplus or the deficit that the district experienced in those years. So again, that 22-23 school year, we had a $2.6, almost $2.7 million deficit, about a $6.2 million deficit in 21-22, and you can see kind of the years back. There were some years with surpluses, some years with deficit positions as well. Of course, we don't have just, what is it, July 2nd. We don't have June 30th, 2024 values yet. We'll have that in probably the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Board Member Hankins?
I just want to address the elephant in the room. The ask at the last couple of referendums walks out of our district every year due to open enrollment. I'd like to challenge our board, admin to start retaining our Beloit district residents in our own school system. And I think it's a definitely need. You add up the numbers, 7.6 plus another 10. It's our district monies that are going out. If we just started to chip away at that, a lot of our monetary problems would resolve itself. But I'm going to challenge our board to get involved to educate our district people who think that we have such a bad school district, and open enrollment's a great thing, but our word of mouth is not good amongst ourselves as Beloit resident, and the narrative has to change. Those dollars are walking out of the district every year. So I'd just like to put that out there for everyone to know. It is the elephant in the room that no one seems to want to address. Thank you.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say that that is one of our large issues, is the fact that we got $16+ million that departs us with others, with our students. Throughout my career, I've never seen a district had great results in getting students that left the district to return. Yeah, but more importantly, right, be futuristic, and we need to find ways to retain our students and our staff, and we probably know what some of those challenges are that are contributing to those exits.
I agree with that. We got to start retaining. I'm not saying talk to the ones that left, come back. If so be it, but we have to keep the narrative changing on new incoming students, or there's just, I'd like to start tackling that. Thank you.
May I ask a clarifying question for Board Member Hankins?
Sure.
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that I understand the charge correctly. What does that look like from your perspective?
Well, just in rolling in bed at night, again, changing the narrative, and how the best form of advertising is word of mouth. We, as a Beloit citizen, and I hear the narrative, I have been through the schools. We all have problems in our school, but our narrative at base is, let's go to Turner. Or, I don't think the parents or whoever is sending their students here are giving us a chance. So I'd like to see perhaps open our schools up while kids are in places to show the public, like an open house. Teaching them that, having them a question and answer with, if you live in the Todd district, that you have an open house, and say, hey, come and visit our school, ask the principal, meet them. I just think that there are ways, and I haven't studied it, but I'd like to address it. I think that administration has a lot to do, but I think that as we as a board, Megan and I talked about, and Megan's talked about going door to door, but this is more important to get the narrative changed. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think it needs to be done. Thank you. I don't have all the answers right now.
No. Thank you. It just sounds like open houses, which happen, back to school nights, which happen, expos, which happen. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything in your charge.
No, I think we got to tell the truth and say the narrative has to change. We know we have a bad reputation, without glossing over it and saying, we understand the problem and we're trying to address it. Help us, like we have with the listening session with the failed referendums. I think the same thing's got to happen.
Thank you, Board Member Hankins. Board Member Miller?
Thanks. So again, challenge accepted, and Ms. Christopa did a beautiful job putting, I don't know if folks at home want to see, but my screen is blurry, so I've been asking for, and I'm just going to gender myself, a grandma brag book, so I can go literally knock doors and be like, hey, do you know about our amazing school district, and look at the wonderful things that we have, because that's different from showing people dollars and cents of a referendum. And as we can see here, the state is criminally underfunding schools and has been doing so for almost 20 years. And until we all get out and vote and demand all of our legislators and people who are running for office ask for the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations to be put into place, challenge how revenue limits are distributed, all of these things that we can't control except through advocacy, which should absolutely increase and continue to happen. And we will be doing so when we write our WASB resolutions, I hope. All of us on the board should be out this summer, and it's come up a couple of meetings now, and I be happy to go anytime. I'm done working tomorrow, so I'm free. But yeah, Ms. Christopa has taken the time to put these together. I would love to accept that challenge, and I think that our board should probably be putting times on calendars for us to get out, split up neighborhoods, and anybody is welcome to join in. But I fully agree with you, Mr. Hankins, that is absolutely part of our charge.
Thank you, Board Member Miller. Any other questions at this time? Mr. Chady, I do have one going back to the general fund revenue by source. Our local contribution is 14.2%. Do you know what the state average is?
The next slide, yeah. I don't off the top of my head. I would say that the school district of Beloit is one of the few districts in the state that's highly funded by state aid. So you see that reflected there. I would venture to guess, I'll just use my old district, Marshall, as an example. I believe Marshall local funding was probably around 58 to maybe like 65%. So that percentage changes district by district for a number of factors. Yep.
Yep, Dr. Garrison, please.
So as I understand it, of course, when we think about the local piece, and again, this number could be fluctuated, the school district of Beloit is probably in the bottom 10 and local support. And so, again, that number kind of fluctuates. And so when you're thinking about how much a school district can get from its community support, that's a drastic difference. When you're talking about 14%, that's a big difference between how other cities are being funded. And so I've shared this before in a previous presentations that when we look at our meal rate and we look at our roommate drops over the years, that our meal rates overall is super low. We're at 396 now. I believe that's probably one of the lowest in the state of Wisconsin. And so again, the school district of Beloit does have work to do in its partnership with the community for better support of its schools. I know we do a whole lot for our community. We talk about it. We've upped our game in making sure people know what we're doing for the community and the schools, but more work needs to be done.
Thank you. Continuing on, this slide speaks to the other funds that compose the school district operations and budget. They're not part of the general operation Fund 10 budget, but there are certain revenues and expenses that occur in various funds for special projects, debt service funds, food service, community service, or cooperative programming as well. Really, for the most part, none of these impact Fund 10 significantly. Fund 80 could have some impact beneficially to the general fund, and we're working to explore those opportunities as well. A couple of remaining slides. So really the what's next, and then we'll talk about a timeline. So we'll incorporate the DPI aid estimate that was released yesterday. Of course, I couldn't do that in this presentation, which was uploaded to board docs last week. So we'll do that. We'll be looking at and refining all of our budgetary revenues where necessary, trying to confirm that the current budgeted revenues are reliable. I'll be honest with you, there were some smaller revenues that we just didn't know, so we didn't plug a value in. But even when we go back in and review and put a value in, that's not going to generate $1 million. I don't even know it's going to generate $100,000. They were that small. But there are additional revenues out there that aren't accounted for, but we'll get that ironed up here in the next few weeks in advance of that August presentation. We also need to be refining our personnel costs. Of course, there's a lot of staffing changes occurring right now. Those staffing changes can perhaps help us. Unfortunately, if there are tenured staff that are departing the district and we are able to fill the position, of course, we want to try to fill the position with the most qualified individual. But at the same token, there's cost savings or cost issues here as well. Continue to scrutinize the vacant positions. We talked about the potential implementation of the 3 furlough days. We also had previously spoken about the changes in the school and department budgets, and we'll continue to re-examine those to see what we can do there. Most importantly, the bottom bullet point, there's just more work to be done. Building a budget's not easy, and unfortunately, it's a multi-month process, and we're still fairly early in that stage of work. The timeline of what's to come is listed here. Here in July, July, we'll continue to look for efforts to reduce spending, confirm our revenues, talked about that. In August, we will be back for a preliminary budget back to the board, asking for your consideration and action. The district's required to hold a budget hearing, which we'll anticipate doing in the month of September at some point. And then in September, one of the key variables, large ones, our third Friday pupil count that's due to occur on September 20th. On October 1st, the Department of Revenue provides another key variable, which is the certified equalized property values. And then on October 15th, the DPI provides the final large piece of the pie, and that's the certification of state equalized aid. So also, in mid to latter part of October, the Department of Public Instructions will inform the district as to the final figures with regards to students and costs that we should anticipate to support charter school, independent charter school, and our private school voucher students. So in late October, we'll be back before the board with the original budget and the tax levy certification as a whole. Before I open it up to ask for any more questions, I just want to kind of walk through a couple of things. One, the budget's presented this evening still has an approximate $7 million deficit. That's pretty significant. We'll look at our revenues, try to find more ways to close the deficit from a revenue perspective, first and foremost. Of course, then we also need to review our expenses to identify if there's additional cost savings opportunities there. To put it in perspective, with a $7 million deficit, we have approximately $10 million in our fund balance. With our current state, the board members are aware of this, and maybe some of the public as well. Here last week, we executed our line of credit for cash flow borrowing purposes to the tune of $2.5 million because we knew that we would be short of cash in the latter part of August through mid part of September when we receive our first state aid payment. So we would not have had cash necessary to meet our day-to-day operations, payroll, and our accounts payable. It's the first time that the district has utilized their cash flow borrowing since, I believe, the 2015-16 school year. I'm kind of working off that from memory. Perhaps some of the board members can confirm or thank you. So that's the first time in a long time that we've unfortunately been in the position that we are in. So just to kind of put the bow on that. Any questions? Other questions?
I do want to bring note that from the past two budgets, we have been able to, at the end of the year, have some form of a surplus. I think it kind of showed up in some of the slides. We just didn't bring note of that. And so I do want you to touch on that before we wrap it up, please.
So I think you're speaking of the 23-24 school year, where we anticipate that the fiscal year just completed will likely end up with a surplus position. It's hard to put a ballpark number on it right now. I know for certain it's not going to be in the million or plus. I wish that it was, but I don't see that happening. It's likely to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but even that, I wouldn't say an $800,000 surplus, maybe a $200,000 surplus, and more importantly, here it is July 2nd, but there is a lot of activity that occurs in the month of June from a business and operational finance perspective. And some of that activity, quite honestly, we just haven't even booked into the system yet. So we'll be working to close out last school year through probably about the second week of August, honestly.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting this presentation together. And I think we're all aware that this is for discussion and information. I have two questions. One is short and easy. Since the budget hearing has traditionally been in October, I will say since I've been on the board, it has never been well attended. There's been very little participation. We also have talked about previously having a legislative town hall listening session, and I'm wondering if we have capacity to pair those together to advertise and can hopefully maximize participation from the community, where we can sort of listen to what our legislators have to tell us about what they've been doing for public schools, where we'd have the opportunity to voice our own concerns. I'm certain that, you know, people who showed up would have the ability to do the same depending on how we format it, and that might increase engagement in the September budget hearing. Is that something that we're open to, or are there issues with that?
So from an administrative perspective, I think that's something that we could possibly explore. I'm always a maybe, not knowing where we will be at the end of this month with our budget, plus, you know, of course, what we will be asking the board to consider at our preliminary conversation the first week in August. You know, things still have to flesh out. So I'm a maybe in that thought for now, Mrs. Miller. But
no, certainly.
Because sometimes in those spaces, people do want to come out and hear from their legislators. Mm-hmm. And so to say, oh, we're going to do this budget conversation as well, it may feel different for some folks. So I'm a maybe at the current time. So.
No, for sure. I'm just trying to, you know, optimize some engagement. I think it would be nice because, you know, we sat there, we had like the phone line going and like no one would call. It was kind of sad. So it would be good to get some more folks to show up. Secondly, it seems to me my biggest takeaway from this presentation is that money can solve problems. And I think that I want to commend our administration and our teachers, our principals, and everybody who is like working hard in ways that are not even being shown here tonight to try to move our district forward despite the financial constraints we have. And I just want to introduce this thought because Board Member Anderson, who couldn't be here tonight, was kind enough to entertain my question at our committee meeting. You know, Dr. Garrison's done a great job sort of unearthing and dusting off that there is actually an existing dormant SDB foundation. And while I doubt that our foundation can make up $10.8 million, it would be so wonderful if people from the community who are interested in supporting our teachers, who many of whom have shown up here tonight, would take it upon themselves to revitalize that foundation and do some really aggressive fundraising. Because while it is very difficult to ask people to understand what a mill rate is and to show up at the polls on a rainy day in April to vote for the absolute necessary funding that we have for public schools, it's a lot easier to ask your neighbor, like, hey, I'm trying to keep my classroom going and we're trying to keep class sizes where they are. Would you be interested in funding this to help us retain teachers for all of the wonderful reasons we've heard tonight? And I just wanted to take this opportunity to put that out there, and it is absolutely not going to solve any major problems, but it certainly can't hurt. So I wanted to just sort of throw that out there. I guess that's all I have to say right now, other than just this is a lot to consider, and you've done a wonderful job kind of delineating all the considerations. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one point, and I apologize, I didn't reflect on this earlier, but you just heard me speak about we got an approximate $7 million deficit, right? So back in April, we asked for $9 million in operational authority, right? That would have closed that $7 million operating deficit, removed that, and perhaps could have helped save, that extra $2 million, some of the expense reductions that we've had to bring forward. Nobody's excited about that, but the opportunity was there to try to preserve that.
Yeah, the state also is facilitating cutting $20 million from our budget this year between private schools and the lack of special education funding.
If there are no other questions, that brings us to item 6B, property liability, workers' compensation, and other business insurance renewals.
So I'll just kick us off real quick with this. As you know, we have been looking at our insurances throughout the school district, and one of the things that we have to, of course, look at is our year-over-year costs and the insurances as well. My hopes is that in this very high-level overview that Mr. Chady will provide, will give you all a snapshot of the increases that we have to consider. Just to let you all know, and Mr. Chady probably going to mention this in his excerpt, that this used to be brought to the board, but then it stopped. And so then, of course, Mr. Chady brought that to me, and I was like, well, of course, we need to bring it back to the board because it was over X amount of dollars. And so, full transparency, this used to be brought to the board, then it stopped, and now we're bringing it back. Just so that the board is aware. And again, maybe it's something that that we will need to continue to look at, but just a high-level overview of our current insurances, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Chady.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Garrison. This was discussed earlier this evening in the Business Finance Operations Committee. I believe the majority, all of the board members, if I recall correctly, were present for that. So I won't go necessarily into all the details that we did there, but I will use this as an opportunity to educate the public on a couple of things as well and why the change. So on the agenda tonight for a couple of different reasons. One, for public awareness, both of the school board members and the community as well. And two, just because I don't necessarily see an exemption for the renewal of the business insurances in our current purchasing policy 672.1, given the dollar value of this, $625, almost $626,000 being recommended, I felt it appropriate to come back before the board and the board to consider, is this something that you want to see, need to see every year going forward? And if so, that's fine. We can make sure we do that. Or is this something, because it's a renewal, that you're okay with, then perhaps a revision or an exemption to the policy needs to be made. Bottom line, our insurances, our business insurances, our property, liability, workers' comp insurance packages are anticipated to go up about $50,000 despite all efforts to bring them in lower. Currently last year in the 23-24 school year, we spent about $576,000 for such insurance coverages. A renewal of those prior insurances straight up with the same carrier, no changes in the deductibles, increased the insurance premiums to over $653,000, which about a $75,000 increase, not something that we could sustain, so we looked at some changes. Tricor Insurance, our broker, brought forward a recommendation with regards to changes, with the biggest change being in the property insurance. Their proposal was that we increase our property deductible from $25,000 to $75,000. Personally, I was a little bit uncomfortable with that, thinking that that might be a little bit high. And then our flood deductible increasing from $50,000 to $75,000. And in that instance, I thought maybe we could go higher. So I contacted Tricor back and I asked, hey, can you give us a proposal on increasing our property deductible from $25,000 to $50,000, and then our flood deductible from $50,000 to $100,000, which they did, and that's reflected in this fourth column, 24-25 optional premium, and I know column 3 and 4 both state that. But my recommendation is that we secure our insurance coverages effective yesterday, honestly, at the value of $625,734. Well aware of board policy and the need for various proposals and bids. Tricor Insurance worked diligently on our behalf. I do thank Jenny Miller, our business office admin assistant, who honestly completed about 60-plus pages of applications for various insurance companies as we sought competitive bids from those insurance companies. Some of the competitive bids came in significantly higher, and to be very honest with you, the majority of the insurers that we reached out to just simply declined to offer a bid proposal. The insurance market is very tight right now. There's not a lot of competition. There are insurers that are literally leaving the market because of the risk. So you see that reflected in both prices increasing and the number of insurance companies that are willing to write those lines of coverage. So unfortunately, man, I wish I had better news there, but we're trying to deliver the best of the worst here.
Go ahead, Board Member Levy.
Thank you so much. So a couple quick questions in that first page. One, thank you for providing this because it caused me to do a little digging, which I appreciate. Inland marine insurance. Now, what I could find says that this provides financial protection for a business's property that is transported on land.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't that be covered under automobile insurance?
Automobiles deal specifically with vehicles, collision, comprehensive coverage, et cetera. Inland marine, yeah, it's kind of a misnomer, right? Because you read the marine and you're thinking boats and stuff. And really the best way to summarize that coverage is equipment. So like lawnmowers, trailers, various pieces of fixed asset equipment that the district has that perhaps are utilized and transported are covered in that inland marine policy.
So if we had a lawnmower that we're transporting, that would not be covered under automobile insurance?
Correct. Automobile does not cover the equipment. It covers the vehicle.
So would we be putting a lawnmower in another vehicle to transport it, or would we be transporting the lawnmower?
We transport lawnmowers via trailers, which is also another itemized equipment inland marine item, pulled behind district vehicles.
Got it. And then another question I had, we have crime and also fraudulent impersonation. So fraudulent impersonation wouldn't be included in our crime insurance?
No, unfortunately it's not. They are separate.
Okay. Now, the information that I found, and not saying that that's specific to this, has as one of the examples of crime insurance, it provides coverage or loss of money, securities, or other assets resulting in acts such as employee theft or third-party fraud, so forgery, for example. But you're saying that fraudulent impersonation does not fall under crime insurance.
Yeah, Board Member Levy, I'd have to defer to our insurance broker, and unfortunately I was not able to connect with them to provide those specifics.
And then just a couple other questions. I also see linebacker insurance, and I had no idea what that was until recently. And so from what I was able to find, it provides protection for liability and defense costs for wrongful acts of the policyholder. So actual or alleged errors, misstatements, misleading acts, omission, neglect, all of that good stuff. Linebacker insurance also isn't covered under or anything else that we have existing.
Correct.
Okay. And then my final question is global insurance. Now, what I found is that's multinational insurance so that you're covered around the world.
Yes.
To the best of my knowledge, we are not operating globally.
We do have student groups that go on international travel. And that's what that coverage is essentially for.
So this is specific for students that do international travel?
It provides insurance protection to the districts with regards to those trips and travels. Yes, it does not provide against any wrongful act that may occur by a staff member, et cetera, on those, yes.
So what does that mean? So let's say that we have a student that goes to Africa for the summer or for some trip. When you say it covers the district, does that benefit the student that's participating in that travel at all?
No. So think of it as a liability insurance. So if something were to occur, essentially the best way to describe it would be that the district should have access to legal counsel through the insurance carrier to represent the district in any act that may occur there. If a student was on one of those trips and had a medical emergency and needed to seek medical care, that would be separate and outside of the global insurance. That would be covered under a student's family personal health insurance.
So this only protects the district and not the student or the staff that may be participating in this international trip?
Correct.
And then is this something that we have international travel with students or staff on a yearly basis, that we always have to have this?
I can't speak to that because I don't know that answer, but I do know that I think we've got one.
I know we have Scotland coming up.
Yeah, but I don't know. Okay.
And Costa Rica, okay.
Yeah, and I don't know the frequency of that. You know, some districts have those things annually. Some are every 2 or 3 years. I can't speak to the frequency here in Beloit.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? There's a recommendation to have a motion to renew the district's respective business insurances for the term, commencing July 1st, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $625,734.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Miller, seconded by Board Member Greg Schneider. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Chady. That brings us to the Town Hall discussion. And this is a discussion regarding the feedback we received after our first, I think we called it a referendum debriefing listening session, and we got a lot of good feedback, and one of the senses that I got and heard during that meeting was that people would like to have more of a conversational style meeting, and then that brought us to perhaps having a town hall style meeting. So tonight, if we can just as a board take a couple minutes and discuss what we would like to see and timeliness of it with Dr. Garrison's input as well.
I would like to share. Thanks for asking. You know, I appreciate the community coming out and sharing with us, you know, their thoughts as pertains to our last conversation with the referendum. I was able to follow up with some of the members even in the audience to bring some additional clarity to, you know, some of our referendum spaces. But I think there was a need for us also to be able to share back, as you just mentioned. In those spaces, I like things to, and this is just me speaking because you asked, I would like us to kind of stick to a specific topic or topics, because we don't know what to necessarily prepare for if it's everybody's individual thought that they want to talk about. And so if we were to, you know, venture down this road, which we can, I would like us to kind of stick to some topics. So if it's, you know, come out, let's talk about, you know, academic achievement. Come on, let's talk about our budget. Come on, let's talk about our programming. Come out and talk about, you know, just that way we will be able to kind of focus our presentation, because it's supposed to be a share back and forth from an administration perspective. We'll be able to share better that way versus if we just open it up to have a town hall, then it's anything can come at us. And to be honest with you, we're supposed to be partners in this work. And a lot of times, unfortunately, there's times where we have felt as administration felt attacked. And now that's something that I need to just put on the table. You know, my hopes is that as we continue to work together through these conversations, that people can see us as partners. And yes, there has been some things that we have not done right, have not happened right for our school district in the past. But in this new administration and board, I believe we are trying to make those corrections to better position us to move forward. Those are the things that has been missing in a lot of our conversations. And so unless people come and share their truths and are able to hear back from us in a collective way, then it could feel like it's just a shouting match back and forth around what we're doing versus what people may think we're not doing. And so I would like to keep it to a specific topic thought or topics, so that it'll be easier for us to prepare for those thoughts based off of the thoughts that come into the room.
Board Member Miller?
Thank you so much. Dr. Garrison, I love that you framed it that way. I think it's really appropriate to have advertised almost like thematic sessions. I want to be responsive to what Mr. Hankins brought up earlier, and I think it would be really wonderful if we could ground all of our sessions to sort of begin and end the same way. And I think that when you have a group of people gathered, we have a captive audience, and I think it would be really nice to say, like, before we get started, with respect to people's time, we'd like to take like 2 minutes, right, to highlight like some of like thematically, like these are some cool things that have happened and are happening. Not to gloss over what we know the issues are, because we're engaging with the community in order to identify those issues, but also to like put forward a narrative that perhaps isn't reaching people. And I think just being very honest with folks and saying, hey, we're all here because we know that there's work to do. Let us show you the work that we're already doing so that people can at least leave feeling like really good and hopefully positively informed. And furthermore, in that spirit of kind of grounding each meeting, I love like what you said to say, like, you know, if you came here expecting to talk about X, but we're here really prepared to talk about Y, we would love to get back to you. And it's not like, it's like, I just thinking setting expectations so people aren't like, oh, well, they're not going to, you know, so we can just say, hey, we're prepared for this topic. We're happy to like hear another topic. Here is how we will get back to you or get that information to you. And that way everybody hopefully feels respected. So those are just my like 85 cents.
Good suggestion. Tom? Or Mr. Board Member Hankins?
Yeah, what I took out of that great listening session was, and again, it was our first one, and it was a very learning experience, and we heard, you know, that they didn't have enough notice. I think the meeting place was excellent. The format, I think we're trying to get to is we as a board were there as a unit, but we treated it as a board meeting because of the way we conduct our business. I think we heard they wanted to give and take, ask questions, and whoever answers it. So I don't know how you frame that session into, you know, the town hall meeting. I'm not sure how that looks. I'm not sure. I think what I heard was they want to give and take, ask if Mr. Chady's there, ask Mr. Chady a direct question. He can respond in a very positive environment. So I'm not sure how that looks like, but that's what I heard. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other board members? Mr. Nichols?
Okay. Just a couple of things. Well, first of all, I missed that session, unfortunately, and I hate to miss those. I did attend the absenteeism workshop that we had way back when, and that we need to get back together because there was a lot of community input, very good back and forth, just like there was on, I guess it was June 12th. So, yeah, I think that's good for all of us, and that gives us an opportunity to listen. That's what we need to do a lot of, is listen. And so I'd certainly welcome all those, and that is just like something like that, and the one on June 12th were more focused, I think. But you could do one on the budget. You could, as you said, Dr. Garrison, absenteeism, academic achievement, whatever. But yeah, I'm all for it. I think it will help us all.
Any other board members? Ms. Levy?
Yes, thank you. Board Member Hankins, I'm going to push back a little bit. We weren't there as a unit because of the rushed manner and the way it was put together. And I am all for town halls. I am all for back and forth and sharing of information. And I'm definitely all for respectful scheduling of events. I think that this should happen at a minimum once a quarter. And I think we select the topics from feedback that we're hearing from staff and community and board members. I would love to participate in every one of those. I think that we give people enough advance notice about the where, the whens, and the how. I would love for us to have like a neutral facilitator so that the board can fully engage and not have to facilitate, and the same for the administration. If we announce our topic, again, with input from students, staff, community, board members, et cetera, that gives the administration time to prepare, and they can fully participate in that. So again, I would love to do this quarterly. I would love to do some on the west side, some on the east side, in school buildings, outside of school buildings, whatever works best for those that are interested in engaging with us. I love everything about that. Let's get dates selected.
Just a clarification on me. We treated it as a board meeting because it was called to order. There was roll taken because there was 4 or 5 of us there, so we had to treat it as a quorum. And President Johnson, you can comment.
Oh, well, and it was a board meeting listening session, and yes, we did not have the amount of time noticed, that we typically have. As we move forward, thinking about referenda, whether it's going to be in November or in April, it's better that we get the discussions happening sooner rather than later. And we were there just to listen, to get feedback from people who felt strongly one way or another, and why they made their decisions to vote the way they did. Go ahead.
Perfect. I just really quick, it was suggested at the last one that we make sure that we have an interpreter available, and I forgot to mention that earlier. I just wanted to jump in and put that into the space. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
So I'm hearing from the board, or just make sure I'm clear. So we're talking about a quarterly opportunity. That's what Mrs. Lee just mentioned. But Board President Johnson, of course, I just want to figure out a timeline because everything's going to start. School year's already started. You know how that goes. So we just want to make sure we get a timeline discussed amongst the board.
Does quarterly seem to work for everyone?
I love that, and Dr. Garrison, forgive me in advance, but I'm going to throw this out there as well. I think it would be amazing for and he does not know I'm about to say this, our superintendent and members of the cabinet down at the high school, they have flex scheduling. And I mentioned this before, no pressure, I'm just going to throw this out here again. If maybe once a semester, students could sign up to speak to their superintendent, cabinet staff, however you want to configure that, and they can schedule it during their flex time, they know it's coming up, and get feedback from students that want to show up and share their ideas. I think that would be a beautiful idea. I would love to be a fly on the wall for those sessions. Again, I'm just kind of throwing this in there since we're talking about pulling community together for feedback. I would love to have us be more intentional about seeking out feedback from our students.
May I piggyback off of that? Because that actually reminds me of a wonderful conversation that I had with, I won't name her name because I don't have permission, but I have a community member who calls me periodically. And she is a member of an active alumni association, and they meet regularly. And I think that would also be a wonderful opportunity if maybe as a board, and I'll volunteer to do some of that work because I don't want to put it all on Board President Johnson, but maybe we could reach out to existing alumni associations. I know there's a retired teachers group that meets. If there are student groups that meet, and perhaps we can schedule appearances that the board could make to be just listeners, like Mr. Nichols suggested. I am fully in favor of doing a town hall. There is a lot of preparation and work that puts on our administration, and so since board members, if we're here to listen, that might be in additional, separate from the town hall thought, right, for us to be able to get into those spaces if we're invited and welcomed, and just to kind of hear how things are going, because I think, to Board Member Levy's point, lifting up opportunities for us to have people engage with us and just kind of hear what's going on, and that could inform, right, those future topics of the larger town halls could be really fun. So thanks for bringing that up.
I concur. I mean, we got to do a better job of getting feedback from our students, especially in these I shouldn't say hot topics, but especially in these big conversations that also impacts them. Last year I felt like our efforts were okay. We did reach out to the schools. We did do the registration, voter registration. We reached out to the community college as well. The community college as well as Beloit College to help in that way. But our students' voice, we could impact more in this conversation because it does impact them when we start talking about, teachers and programs and everything from activities and athletics. I mean, everything is, it does impact our students. And so we can do a better job at soliciting the voice of our students. Duly noted.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Board Member Greg Schneider, you've been so quiet tonight.
I agree with all the comments that have been said. I think it's really important. I like the idea of once a quarter to begin with. There is so much other stuff going on. I don't want to overload everybody to begin. There may be an occasion where we need to add another one in if something big is coming up. But I think we need to be careful on our time and especially the administration's time with everything that's going on right now. But definitely, I think I like the idea of a town hall. With the last one, there were people just asking questions about the referendum. And I know, Dr. Garrison, you said you reached out to them. But it would have been much more of a time saving if we could have discussed it right then in the meeting and covered them all, rather than having 3 or 4 individual meetings covering the same thing. So I think just being able to share that information and share, feelings and where we're at and how things are going, and to have that discussion to work through that would be very important.
Okay, well, Dr. Garrison, you've got your work cut out for you. Okay, that brings us, any last comments before we move on? That brings us to the consent agenda. Brian Nichols, I think you wanted to remove something?
Yes, pull 7B, 532, professional educator contracts.
So,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda absent 7B.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Megan Miller, seconded by Amy Levy. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Just for point of clarity, I heard you mention that something was incorrect in the addendum at the bottom.
There's several things. So
just a point of too many mics.
Yeah,
just a point of order. If we could vote on the motion on the floor, and then I plan on bringing up that item, so we'll have discussion on it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. Any discussion? Ms. Levy?
Yes, I actually move approval, let me find it, of item 7B for second and final reading, policy 532, professional educator contracts.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, so the agenda says second reading, the policy says first reading. The references to at the bottom, state statute 118.21 and state statute 188.22. Okay, well, and so if you look at that, if you look at the statutes, it doesn't address it doesn't address non-renewals, the time limits, the term limits, and all that. It even addresses the only exclusion for you've got limited term contracts. They list part-time teachers only, but that's only effective in cities of the first class, and I assume that's large cities like Milwaukee and Madison, not Beloit, Wisconsin. Is that correct?
If I may, Board Member Nichols.
Yes.
I believe that we can get this approved but amended because you are correct. 188.22 is a typo. It should be 118.22. And if you pull up that state statute, so two of them are proposed to be cross-referenced. 118.21 outlines teacher contracts. And if we go back to the policy, it says professional educators' contracts shall be issued annually, and all contracts with educators will reference Wisconsin State Statute 118.21. I believe if we also add 118.22, which speaks to renewal of teacher contracts, and the timing is included there under Clause 2. Just to point out one of them, it says if no such notice is given on or before May 15th, the contract then in force shall continue to ensue for the school year. So the information that you're saying is actually included there. Did you have other concerns with the policy?
Also, the link to the employee handbook does not work. So I don't know.
Your mic.
The link to the employee handbook does not work. You get an error message. So if someone's trying to look for that, it doesn't work. I can't answer that.
Well, I don't think that should be a reason not to approve policy for a final reading. I think that's something that we can get corrected. So because there was a vote in a second, I know it's a little time consuming, but if we could vote that down, and then I would be more than happy to make a motion as amended. And again, those amendments, and please let me know if we didn't address all of your concerns, Board Member Nichols. There is a typo at the cross-reference, so it should be State Statute 118.22. Instead of 188.22, and it may be helpful if we title those so people know exactly what it is. So for example, the state statute 118.21, if we put teacher contracts, and then state statute 118.22, renewal of teacher contracts, and then if someone can fix that link for employee handbooks, does that address all of your concerns with the policy?
Except for the limited term contracts, because if I'm reading this correctly, we have to notify them even on a limited term contract, although they refer to it as part-time contract. I'm assuming, I hate to assume when it comes to legal, but I'm assuming that's the same thing.
I believe that is different than your professional educator contracts, but if someone from administration could clarify that. So this would be non-professional educator contracts. Ms. Almendarez, would you provide some context for what's required for renewal or non-renewal?
So there is a difference between limited term contracts and professional educator contracts. Okay. And we'll bring clarity to that through Mrs. Almendarez's thoughts.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Limited term contracts are only good for 1 year. The verbiage within the contract itself is consistent with what it reads in the policy. Essentially, they're taking a 1-year contract that expires that same year. If they wish to come back, we do have the option to go ahead and contract with them again for the subsequent year. It allows the district to ensure that they're also meeting all of the requirements, because the limited term contracts are primarily for our provisional license. So there's enrollment in programs that need to happen. There's registering for the license that needs to happen. And so we don't enter into a regular professional educator contract until they do have all of their license requirements in order.
And the professional contract?
The professional educator contract follows the 118.21 and 118.22.
Board Member Nichols, does that clarify and help your concerns?
Well, the only other thing I have is that, you know, this says first reading and this says second reading, so I don't know, I'm not sure which is which.
Michelle, this is the second time. This is the second time, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
So again, if we are interested in approving this policy with the edits, we would need to vote down the motion that's on the floor, and then I will be happy to issue a new motion for the policy as amended.
Okay, so we now have a motion as is by Megan Miller and seconded by Amy Levy. Did I? No, I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, so that motion was by Amy and seconded by Greg Schneider. Is that the first one was? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so
Nay.
So that motion fails.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and second motion.
I move approval of policy 532, professional educator contracts as amended.
Second.
So a motion of approval of policy 532 with amendments by motion by Amy Levy, seconded by Greg Schneider. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. That brings us to the future board meeting dates. Here, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're correct. My apologies.
Oh,
This is
okay.
for human resources, I'm sorry.
Our next regular board meeting is Tuesday, July 16th at 6 p.m. And there is a policy committee meeting tomorrow night at what time?
5:30.
At 5:30. And now we are at human resources. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to considering employment exhibits. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Amy Levy, seconded by Greg Schneider to go into closed session. Any discussion? Michelle, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Tom Hankins,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
and Tia Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
The Board of Education may reconvene to public session in order to take any action if necessary on the items discussed in the closed session.
And I love Sally so much.
Oh, yeah.
If I were in the grocery store, I'd be a problem. She texted me, she was like, you have a weed on the side of your house. It's flowering my flower bed. She's like, is it okay if I spray and I'm like, Sally, you can do all of that stuff. You do whatever you believe in. I do all the things.
That's what my sort of act.
I love Sally.
That's what my sort of act too. Like, can I?
Please forgive me. First of all, please forgive me.
Wow.
Okay. Can I get a motion for the approval of the HR report as with amendment?
I think the admin wants to know the edit.
Yes.
Okay.
Someone. Is it me? That was me. Sorry. There are some amendments that we would like to make per board. Number one, Ursula Etheridge. Her lateral transfer is not from Aldridge; it's actually from Fruzen. Additionally, the overall compensation for Ursula Etheridge in the interim position is $486.86. That's a total of 11 days at a 10% rate of $44.26. And one additional correction is Sheila Marshall, an administrator in our district, is retiring, not resigning.
I move approval of employee recommendation Exhibit A.
Second.
Motion of approval of Exhibit A by Amy Levy, seconded by Greg Schneider. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And that brings us to item 10, executive session. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to property/negotiating public funds, and Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent G of the Wisconsin State Statutes for conferring with legal counsel regarding soil contamination.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Greg Schneider, seconded by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Megan Miller.
Aye.
Tom Hankins.
Aye.
Brian Nichols.
Aye.
Amy Levy.
Aye.
Craig Schneider.
Aye.
And Tia Johnson.
Aye. The Board of Education may reconvene to public session in order to take any action, if necessary, on items discussed in closed session.